My good friend Pete Doree, how you doing?
I'm really good, Aaron. It's nice to see you again.
Nice seeing you. And speaking of seeing, if you're watching the video version of the show, we're doing something a little different today. Pete is going to be doing a little sketching while we talk, and we're going to
Yeah,
try to capture that on camera.
yeah, so I'll hold it up a little bit. I don't know if everybody's aware, but over on Twitter, Tom Scioli has set up this thing called Jacktober. There was a thing last year called Inktober that all the artists got involved in, and 6 fan arts, which I know that you saw, Aaron. And Tom, because he's done his Kirby book and because I do my Kirby book, he just said, does anybody want to do Jacktober? Here's a list of Kirby characters and
Mhm.
we'll do it today. So we're nearly done. I've got one more to do. I've got the demon to do, and I've done everything else. And we finish on Saturday. And I've started, let's hold that back so it's not so dark, Count Trigorin from Jimmy Olsen. And this is actually ripped off from a picture of Walt Simonson that I found of him as a vampire. Can't tell it's Walt. So I'm going to ink Count Trigorin, hopefully, with a brush, and I'm not very good with brushes. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay. And if you're watching the video version and we don't always get Pete and the drawing in the same picture at the same time, it's just the reality of technology. So
Yeah, sorry.
we'll do the best. So, Pete, I just got done reading Stan and Jack #2, the continuation of your miniseries. And as somebody who loved the first one, I enjoyed the second too. And
Right.
it's a basically puts a lot of comic book creators in the role of comic book heroes.
Yeah, yeah. That's entirely the point. As I said to you last time, it's as if Stan and Jack had their own strip in Mad, and then once I realised that I could actually carry the likenesses through and I could make it hopefully look like them, then I just went mad and went, okay, who else do I love that I can do? You know, so as you know, in issue 2, there's a lot of Vaughan Bodie. I love Vaughan Bodie. I don't know if many people are even aware of him these days, but he was this fantastic 60s underground artist, cartoonist, one of the best cartoonists ever, I think. So there's a lot of him in there. Dick Giordano's in there. Steranko's in there. You tell me.
Yeah, like a lot of names, and you'll probably get to the point where even the biggest comic fan is going to read this and they're going to find 1 or 2 names they have to sketch on a notepad and look up later on because you might know the work, but you don't know the name.
Yeah, I mean, I do try to kind of, if you know these people, I do, the joke I do about them is the thing that we all know about them. So again, as you know from both issues, there's always the Vince Coletta joke. There's going to be a Vince Coletta joke because we all know about Vince. We all have kind of the same opinion about him. You know, Neil Adams is in the second issue and he's earnestly fighting for creators' rights, which is what we know about Neil. So hopefully it's, even if you don't know the characters, you've got to pick it up. You know, you're going to get that Vaughan Bodie is a bit spaced out, but not as spaced out as he makes out. You're going to get.
Well, it's great to throw so many in-jokes and so many tongue-in-cheek references into a story, but if that's all there is, it kind of leaves a lot of people out. You did a good job of working in just enough info to bring somebody who might be a novice into the story too.
Yeah, and also, you know, you're right. I have to bear in mind that these are characters. They're not the real Stan and Jack. They're not the real Neil Adams. They are characters, and they have to move through the story, and they have to have something more, some sort of comedic depth than just a punchline. And I hope they do have that.
There was a comic convention I was at way back at this point where I talked to a certain someone about what it was like to play a weird cartoonish version of himself.
Right.
And he actually sat down and gave me a good long list of what you can do when you're playing yourself but not yourself. Can you guess who that someone might have been?
It could be anybody. Go on, who is it?
Adam West.
Wow.
Because the idea of his Family Guy presence, of just being the bizarre Adam West character, it's like, how does one do that? And I figured he was the perfect person to ask.
I suppose that makes sense because he, a bit like Stan, really, he was Adam West and Adam West in inverted commas. So he became Adam West. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And that's kind of how I started to see a lot of the characters in your story. There is that they just become the character version of themselves, which
Yeah.
I had to sit down and wonder what would they have thought if they had read this.
I hope they'd love it. I'm sure Stan would, because he just liked the publicity, wouldn't he?
Yeah, Stan's a given.
Yeah, I hope they would like it, because as you know, it's all done in love and respect, and these are all people that I grew up genuinely worshipping. I mean, on Twitter tonight, everybody's talking about Bernie Wrightson because it would have been his birthday today. Who doesn't love Bernie Wrightson? You know, if you don't love his stuff, you comment. And he was a major, and still is, major hero to me. Almost to the point where, especially because I grew up in England, those people, Stan, Jack, Bernie, Barry Smith, Jeff Jones, it's almost like they weren't people, they were gods. They were so far away and they were so great at what they did. I don't even know how Bernie Wrightson did what he did. It's beyond, it's totally my skill set or even understanding some of it. So go on.
I was just going to say that, you know, you and I both grew up before the internet got big and before Comic Cons were on every street corner. So for us, these people, most of what we knew about them was their name in the bottom of the first page of a comic book. We didn't know anything about them personally. So that just led them to have what you call the god status there, because you just knew a name and then this amazing story that they made.
Yeah. And I don't know that somebody was saying recently online that it doesn't happen anymore. You don't really follow artists anymore like we did. I would buy it, you know, I would instantly buy anything that Bernie Wrightson did. I don't know that happens anymore. I mean, even Liam Sharp, who is obviously brilliant, you know, I don't know that people follow him, but follow Green Lantern. I think that's changed slightly.
Yeah, it's interesting because you also start to see people at a much earlier stage in their career than you might normally see otherwise.
That's yeah. But then so did we, I suppose, to a certain. You know, the classic case is Barry Smith, isn't it? Who started Herbie Clone, and I do remember reading those first Conans in British Reprint and thinking he was amazing at that point. But then you see stuff like Red Nails, and again, you're just, how the hell did you do that? It's blown away by it.
Hey, Pete, I just want to let you know there's a little bit of a cutout on the audio. Are you getting me loud and clear?
No,
okay.
Fine.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then I'm hoping Skype will take care of the details later on.
It might be because I'm moving about, Aaron. I'm trying not to move about and just stick.
Sure. Well, if the background noise cuts out too, so I'm thinking it's something with the connection. But again, Skype could be correcting that later on.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we threw around a lot of ideas last time we talked about where you could take this and who you could work in, and I definitely don't want to get into get you give away any spoilers, but you did say that you've got the next two issues in the can ready to go.
Yeah, so I've got the third issue is long done. I did that a long time ago, and that is the end of the current storyline where they're with the Collector, and they're all prisoners in space, and then they get back. And then, in fact, let me show you. You can see some of this stuff online on the various websites that I've got. So I won't show you 3. I'll show you 4. So this is the lead-in to issue 4, which is Barry Smith and John Buscema. So they get sent back. They all get sent back to the Hyborian Age. Stan and Jack and Roy Thomas and these two.
Yep. And we're seeing these guys dressed up as almost these gladiators, barbarians type of characters.
I mean, I had a thought. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, and then I had an idea literally the other day. Because I thought, okay, how am I going to get these two to fight each other? And I thought, okay, well, I've got to have a wizard. What if Sal Buscema is the wizard?
I like that.
And he's got this brotherly love-hate thing going on with Big John, obviously, as brothers do. And he's like, I got here, I don't know, a couple of years before you. I've taken over. no, you two fight for me. So that's my excuse to get Sal in there as well. So that's going to be the 5th issue. This is the cover, and as I say, you can see the finished one.
And it shows Jack Kirby emerging as kind of almost like a ghostly figure from a little fire.
Yeah, and that's Steve Gerber, who thinks he's hallucinating. And this whole issue is Jack stuck in the mind of Steve Gerber, because Jack, certainly my Jack, and really the real Jack as well, was a real kind of go-ahead, two-fisted, I can get stuff done kind of guy. And the perspective, even though it probably isn't true, but the perspective that I always had about Steve Gerber because of his stories was that he was the ultimate paranoid and the ultimate kind of Woody Allen character without all the nasty stuff. So again, it's the two opposites, like in the 3rd issue where I put Vaughan Bodie against Steve Ditko because they're two opposites. This is kind of the same thing. So that is the 4th issue. And then I plan to do Bernie Wrightson in the 6th issue, which is, as I said to you last time, his giant side Stan thing. Stan turns into a swamp creature and they hang out with them. Then I think the only other one I've got in mind is somebody said to me, which I know it was Tony Esmond because I did his podcast, and Tony said to me, when I said Stan and Jack was like something that happened in Mad, he said, "Oh yeah, I could see Don Martin drawing it," which instantly made me think I've got to put Don Martin in it. Mm-hmm. So I think issue 6 or 7 will be in Don Martin's madhouse, and I'll draw Don like one of his characters, which is really an excuse to have fun, because why wouldn't I want to do that? Why wouldn't I try to draw like Don Martin? And that, I think, is as far as I've got. But to be honest, that will keep me going most of next year, won't it?
Yeah, I was just thinking when you're talking about getting two of the characters to fight each other, it may be one of the biggest comic problems in history is how to get two heroes to fight each other, because everybody wants to do it and the story never really lends itself to it.
Well, that's like every issue of Marvel Team Up, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Every single time, that's what happens for the first 10 pages. Yeah, I haven't quite figured that out. But see, I have the get out clause in that, because this is semi-parody, I can use hoary old cliches and things like that and go, well, it's a homage, and make a joke of it. And I can have them standing around going, oh, 13 pages in, it's the fight scene. So in a way,
you could get down to the level of somebody's personality changes because a coconut dropped on their head. I mean, you really that's on the table for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a double-edged thing in a nice way, in that I can do anything with this comic and kind of get away with it, and people won't go, that old cliche.
Mm-hmm.
But I can, I can take it anywhere, really, can't I? I mean, I am thinking shorter stories for future issues. So just to stop myself getting bored, to be honest, because I think I'm good at gags, and I think I'm good at character. Not to bore me. I mean, the storyline in the first 2 issues is really just a storyline to hang the jokes on it. It's a plot, but that's not the important thing as far as I'm concerned. So I think maybe some 1 pages, maybe some 3 pages, just mix it up a bit to stop me and everybody else getting bored as well.
We were talking off mic, right, while we were setting everything up here. Like I had just made an off the cuff comment about Archie, just because it was something I've been on my mind a lot lately. And you just said, "Hey, we didn't get that much over here," and that made sense because it's very U.S. centric comic. But then I just started to wonder what other differences are we just not even aware of between the two groups of comic fans.
I don't know. I mean, what was big when you were a kid?
Marvel was pretty big in the 80s when I was a kid. I mean, that was really the big thing, but not the Marvel we know of today. When I was a kid, it was the post Secret Wars era, where you were talking about Spider-Man, the X-Men to a lesser degree. Captain America was still kind of off in the periphery, but it was not really the point where X-Men got big at that point. And,
Right.
I'm sure the comic fans, the comic readers were definitely into that. But the people like me that just kind of look for movies and toys, it was a whole different world out there.
Right. I mean, for us, it was just the comics. It was mostly Marvel because we couldn't get it. Except we kind of graduated as we got older up to Warren because that was north. But we couldn't get Show. We got DC, but we didn't like it as much as we like Marvel. And I still kind of have that in the back of my mind.
Yeah, and DC was, when I was in the 80s, it was kind of in a weird stage because the Superman movies were popular.
Yeah.
But everything else just kind of fell by the wayside because DC was, well, that was where you got the Batman show from the 60s, and the Super Friends thing was popular for a minute.
Yeah.
But it didn't really have the staying power until the 89 Batman movie came about.
Well, it's a little bit like that now, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
It just seems to be Batman and Joker, and so I couldn't be less interested in Three Jokers. Really, the Joker is, he's a great villain, but he's a one-sided thing, isn't he? It's just, I'm trying to think. Well, he's not Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom has personality. The Joker is just who he is, really.
I think that's the best way to think about that is there have been a lot of Joker backstories in the past. I don't think any of them have worked.
Well, I think, as we said before, the Joker doesn't need a backstory.
No.
That's, like you said, it's he could be your neighbour. That's what's terrifying about him if you're of a mind to be terrified.
I think that he is an interesting villain, but he's probably not in the top 5, I would say.
Not for me, not even close. No. So they do seem, but then I was going to say they do seem to be a bit fixated on the Joker, but then they were fixated on Wolverine for about 20 years, weren't they? And I kind of, as far as I'm concerned, the only Wolverine stories that ever happened are those in the original Claremont Byrne Cockrum X-Men. That's when I liked Wolverine. After that, I don't really care. But then, I'm an old fan, so I'm gonna feel that way, unfortunately.
I think that that's something that we definitely struggle with, is that the stuff that we get into first tends to be what we cement as the best.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure there's a way around that.
I don't think there is. Somebody was saying online last night about exactly that, and saying, we, including the person who said it, need to get past this, and you need to accept that comics are just comics and they were the best ones when you were 7. Which, of course, is true, but that's a logical argument, not a heart argument. As I said, probably last time, I do like Daredevil at the moment, but it's not my Daredevil. I really don't like the Legion. It isn't my Legion.
And I think that there has to be something to be said for there being a material difference between the comics prior to the mid 90s and now, just because there's so much more money and attention on it now that the process of writing them has been different. That has to change things. You can't tell me it doesn't.
No, absolutely. And it is a poison chalice. How do you write Daredevil? How do you write Spidey? Make it anything other than nostalgia. It must be really tough. I wouldn't want to do it. Well, he's asking.
Yeah, and like I said, we have a thing now with Spidey, and then we had the Spider-Verse movie where the general public got exposed to the multiple Spider-Mans for the first time, and Miles Morales is finally getting his day in the sun, and I'm very glad for that. But at the same time, it just feels like it's on a production line now. It's gone too far in the other direction.
Yeah. I just can't bring myself to care. I mean, I don't know if this was the last time we spoke, but my second oldest friend in the world, who I've known since I was 9, who refuses to buy DC, given up buying Marvel, and he has bought everything since 1972 You've got complete sets of the Avengers, complete sets of Spidey, you name it. I'm just wasting my money. And if you've lost him, no, what else?
Would you be interested in seeing film versions and reboots of the stories that you actually liked, that you really embraced?
Yes and no. I mean, I do like, again, as we said before, I like the fact that the movies touch on things that I grew up on, but don't just read the story. I think that would be tedious.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, you know, if anybody had the balls to make a proper movie, be there, or a proper Howard the Duck movie, or a proper Killraven movie. But that would never happen, would it? They're just too out there. I'm nearly done it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's coming along nicely.
Yeah. That's because I did all the work in the pencils. Yeah. I mean, how about you? Would you want to? I mean, I think I saw talk of a Secret Wars movie. I think.
I couldn't say I wouldn't be curious, because I did love it a lot, and there was a time when I would have said, yeah, I really think they could just literally transpose the comics into a script and print it out, and I would love it. I probably would.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think it may be a case of be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. It's never going to be the same, is it?
Mm-hmm. No. A part of it would come down to it. You know, when a comic is written in a different era, it works for a different era. So,
Yeah.
you know, even a comic 20 years ago, while it might be a great story, you don't buy it when it's put into today.
No. But then on the flip side, I'm still astonished that dull characters to me, like Cap, Thor, and Iron Man, who I thought were the dullest characters as a kid, especially and so great in the movies. You know, I've genuinely watched those movies and gone, oh, I now get that. I now get what people see in them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the characters, whether they work or not, I mean that can work, that can transfer over. And I've actually been surprised at how some characters have had a new life put into them, because I think we said last time, when I was a kid, Thor was a joke character.
Yeah.
Nobody took Thor seriously, and now he's like this hottie that everybody loves, and like I never saw that coming. I really didn't.
No. And I really like the character.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, I now get it. I now get what people see in it. But before, no. When I was a kid, Cap we bought when Steve Englehart wrote it. Never bought Thor, never bought Iron Man, just wasn't interested. But then I think Thor in particular was, as I said again, it was because of the language, because of the these and the thous and all that stuff. Couldn't get big.
Well, I'm thinking of an example here of, you know, when you're asking about recreating something, and I was talking about how sometimes things are just a product of their time. Like one of my favorite stories, Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Right.
That story kind of hinges on the fact that it takes place about 45 years after World War II. That's a pretty important piece of information, because you're talking about the relationship with the older Golden Age heroes, and the fact that they're only one generation behind is significant. If you try to remake it today, with World War II being quite a few years more than that in the past now, I don't think it has the same tone, even though the story is just as good.
No, you're probably right. I've never read Crisis on Infinite Earths. I've read the first issue, and I just reason. But I did see the Stargirl TV show. Where is it set on Earth too? Because there is a big link to the JSA in there. And so maybe it's an Earth 2 thing. Maybe that's the way they do it. I don't know if you watch it.
Yeah, I haven't caught that one actually, but the Earth 2 reference is definitely cute.
Yeah. Any way they could do it.
Yeah.
But then I don't really see why they can't do a Sergeant Rock movie or a decent Jonah Hex movie.
True. And so someone, those shows that I think that I like the fact that the Captain America started out as a period piece. I like the fact that Wonder Woman was a period piece. I think that could be the answer to getting around a lot of the hesitation they have to make some of these movies.
Yeah. Well, again, Luke Cage should have been set in the 70s. I'll die on that hill.
Mm-hmm.
They should make a Luke Cage and Iron Fist and Doors of the Dragon all together in a movie in the 70s, because that is their era.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see the need to keep everything contemporary, especially when sometimes it doesn't work. If we're taking something from another era, let it be from another era.
Yeah. People will buy it. They bought Cat,
Yeah.
Even friends of mine who are like, oh, it wasn't very good. And then they come back to me and go, well, I watched Winter Soldier and now I realise why the first one was good. Because most people aren't used to this kind of continuity, are they? They're not used to waiting for that big reveal. Somebody said to me a while ago, oh, it's always origin stories. Well, what else do you expect? You have to have an origin.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, why are you going to care?
Especially when they're doing so many characters now that previously didn't get that kind of light. I think we could do well without doing another Batman origin for another 2 decades at least. We can sidestep that. But if you're making a movie out of Iceman, you kind of need to fill in some background there.
Yeah, I could do without another Batman movie, full stop, to be honest, let alone origin.
If they're going to be like what we've seen, I'm not arguing with you.
Yeah. I mean, there was this thing this week or last week that they're filming in Liverpool over here, which is hilarious. Because everybody over here is just going to go, that's the Liver building, which is the famous building in Liverpool. Mm-hmm. There's Batman on the Liver building.
There was some considerable talk about Christopher Nolan and doing the last trilogy, how, they said Batman was the quintessential American superhero, and I'm not sure I quite agree with that. But let's humor them. And they're saying, and it was just interesting that they needed a non-American director to really bring that out. I'm like, I'm not sure I see that. I think that.
Go on.
I was just saying, I think that there's it's something that translates a little more. It's just anybody who can get the dark part of their mind working would relate to Batman.
Yeah, anybody. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But Batman's cool, isn't he? There's that as well. He is cool.
Yeah.
Superman, great. He's not cool.
No. It's almost a joke that he's the Boy Scout. He's hokey, which it works to his advantage sometimes.
Yeah.
I think we all need a little something that's just purely positive.
Yeah. But Batman, and Superman, I wouldn't say he looks silly. He doesn't. But he looks like the Boy Scout, like Cap looks like the Boy Scout.
Mm-hmm.
Batman just looks cool and is cool. It can't be that to make a movie. That's not bad.
It's coming along there.
Well, I'm just really glad that we're at the end of October, because it's been fun, but it's been really tough. A lot of people have fallen by the wayside, and some of the other challenges on Twitter and on similar things where you have to do a new drawing every day. A lot of people have fallen by the wayside there as well, because I've got a day job, so to sit. I mean, it's nice doing this and talking to you tonight, obviously. Mm-hmm. But to sit after work and just going, God, I've got to do it. I'm doing it today. But I've kind of looked at it as a personal challenge. But also, it's quite good for your mental health to be forced to produce something every day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been worth doing. But I'm glad it's nearly over. I've
come to curse social media in all its forms, even though I continue to use it. But when I first got on Facebook, I liked it a lot, and I would challenge myself to post something every day that I was trying to be creative on, and it was a challenge, and it wasn't always fun, but I think it was definitely beneficial.
I think it is, just by the very nature of just producing something, whether it be a bit of writing or whatever. It's definitely got me through this month, because we're sort of heading back into lockdown. So you have to get your mindset prepped for that. And this is how. So that is, done. That is Counter-Goring, which will go up on Friday.
Very cool. Has all the great classic touches there.
Yeah. So what I'll do, I'll just because I've got my I've got my Jimmy there, and so Counter-Goring is just white with red lipstick, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I'll just put some lipstick on him, and that'll be him done. And then, as I say, I'll do the demon. Job done.
Sweet.
So I now don't feel so rude because now I'm looking at you.
Well, so what have you been reading anything comic-wise otherwise?
Reading.
Mm-hmm.
I've been rereading because I'm near the boxes. I forgot, but I've got all of the black and white Doc Savages.
Wow.
I've been rereading those, so they are all. Have you ever read these?
I have not. I've seen them. I love the artwork, but I haven't actually got a chance to read into them.
Yeah, they're Doug Mensch, and they're either John Buscema or Tony DeZuniga, or both. Every issue. There's only 6 or 7. I'll show you one of the great covers. Yeah, that's my favourite cover.
That is.
Yeah, because I love the Marvel black and whites. So I've been rereading Doc Savage. I don't know if you saw, probably, I don't think you did. I discovered there's a market stall in my town, and there's a comic stall on there.
Oh.
Suddenly appeared, and again, my friend Dave was up just before lockdown, and he can sniff out secondhand comics like you wouldn't believe. And I said to him, "There's no point, isn't it? They'll have nothing. It'll all be rubbish." But they do have a little Bronze Age section. I've got some real bargains. So I bought some Savage swords. I bought Avengers 20, something like that, for like £2. Because this guy doesn't seem to know. I probably shouldn't say this online, but this guy doesn't seem to know what Bronze Age and Silver Age stuff is worth. He just goes, "Oh yeah, is that okay? £2." Yes.
Well, to give him some credit, maybe he does know, but he also realizes that not everybody who walks into that door is going to know or care, so he's got to take what he can get.
Yeah, maybe. It was funny this week because I went there on Saturday, and like I say, I got some Savage swords and some Marvel 2-in-1s, some George Perez Marvel 2-in-1s, really cheap. And there were these couple of young girls, and they just walked up to him and they went, "Have you got any Doctor Strange?" And he said, "Oh no, I don't think so." And I said, "But you do, because I've just seen it. Here's a Gene Colan one." Of course, they bought like £3. But they went, and I thought, are they buying for their older brother or something? Because they were literally like 12 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that. I can't imagine they were suddenly. They might be into Benedict Cumberbatch.
That was my first thought.
Yeah. So maybe, just go there and go, "Have you got this?" Not even knowing what Doctor Strange is. So a Gene Colan Doctor Strange is totally going to blow. But it's a nice little market stall. So that's basically what, as usual with me, I'm reading old stuff again because I just so disappointed in new stuff. How about you?
Well, I've been getting into trade paperbacks a lot, mostly to try to fill in some, because for budget reasons, I'm not buying a lot of individual comics anymore. The stuff I want, too expensive. So $25 for a whole story or a whole year's worth, good deal for me.
Yeah.
So what would you say I should be reading right now as a guy who's not historically a Marvel guy, needs to brush up on some Bronze Age stuff, what should I be looking for?
In terms of Bronze Age stuff?
Yeah.
Well, you can't go wrong with any Steve Gerber. Somebody posted a Man Thing omnibus, which came out. Man Thing is always worth reading because a lot of it's Mike Ploog and John Buscema. Really, anything by Steve Gerber. Do you like Don McGregor?
Sure.
Yeah. So Killraven, there's probably a trade of Killraven. There's definitely a trade of Black Panther. Is with Billy Graham. Englehart's Cap. Anything by Kirby, obviously, but you know that. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's enough stuff there to interest you, I think. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because I'm picking the cream of the Bronze Age,
and that's what I would hope for, because I just got back, I finished up a batch of Iron Man comics from the 90s, a batch of Batmans from the 80s, and then a batch of Supermans from the 40s. So it's like, okay, yeah. So I got a range there, but it's like I really got to attach the classic Marvel era a little bit more. I keep shying away from that for some reason.
Well, as I say, do Gerber, do McGregor. Those Doc Savages are in a trade, weirdly published by DC. I've no idea why.
I can't get that.
But and that's only a couple of years old, I think. And like I say, there's only 8 issues. I mean, they are very Doc Savage, because it's a pulp hero, is very formulaic. It's the same every time, but they're just fun. The art is fantastic, obviously. We were talking about Craig Russell online last night, a few of us. Anything by Craig Russell, anything by Bernie.
Awesome.
Any of those guys. I'm intrigued that you're reading Superman in the 40s, because I've got an old trade which is Superman from the 30s to the 70s, just 78. So I was reading some of those recently, which are really aren't they? They're not. They're almost not Superman, because they're not the Superman we know.
Right. I find that very fascinating, actually. I like the fact that the character starts off a bit more brutal than we're used to.
Yeah.
A bit more frightening than we're used to, but he still has that horror inside him that you will recognize. But you, like I said about earlier, you have to learn to read it within the context of the time. Yeah,
you do. I mean, I reread the original Conan stories a few years back. I read them when I was a kid. They were unexpurgated, so they were full of racism and obviously full of sexism. But you just read them in the period. There are people who rag on H.P. Lovecraft. I'm not going to read that because it's racist, which it is. It's horrendously racist. But I think it's also brilliantly written, and that's not really an excuse. But I'm prepared to accept that. I'm prepared to ignore that.
You can definitely see the value in something without excusing the flaws. That's the way I tend to look at it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I don't know. Having said that, there are musicians whose work I wouldn't listen to because I hate them.
That's fair.
Because they're just horrible people. There's a few anti-maskers who've come out, musicians over here. Luckily, I didn't like any of them anyway. Yeah, I don't know. I'm prepared to forgive dead authors. Let's say that. I think that's fair enough.
Well, I said I think that's definitely a privilege you can leave for yourself. You don't necessarily have to forgive them, but if you do, I get where you're coming from. Like I said, it's what they make is different than who they are.
Sometimes. Although if you go back to Vaughan Bodie, his work was very much who he is, and his work is quite challenging. Mm-hmm. Quite a lot of it. It's not as fluffy and as nice as it appears at first glance. And I find those kind of people fascinating, because somebody like that, or Jeff Jones, you really can't subtract their work from who they were, because their work is all about who they were. But that's endlessly fascinating to me, which is probably why I do Stan and Jack, just to do that little tribute.
And hilariously, Stan and Jack is filled with little in jokes about how they're just in it for the paycheck.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which they kind of are, because again, that was kind of when I was maybe hit my teens. That was a harsh realization that they were just working Joes. You know, whenever you see an interview with John Romita Senior, he's always like, "Oh, I got a treatment, drove a cab, but it was just a job." Well, it clearly wasn't, because you put your heart and soul into it. But in a way, yeah, it was. It was just a gig. Which for kids who grow up worshipping these people is quite a blow.
It's why I'd say I don't begrudge them the human aspect of, you're doing a job. Okay, it's a job you like. That's good. It's a job you're good at. It's a job I'm enjoying that you're doing.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to mind that you're getting paid for it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I've never had a bad experience meeting a professional. They're always very nice. They're always very appreciative that you like their work, and you're prepared to say that, because most of them live these closeted lives in cover. I do think it's sometimes worth remembering, with all the, as you said, because about social media, with all the nonsense that goes on social media. I think comic social media is actually better than a lot of us think it is. It's just that most people are very nice and pleasant.
Well, I think you're right there, and I think that's a good place to leave it off. Pete, could you tell people where you can find your social media links and all your work?
Yes. Now, you always ask me this, and I always forget.
I can just copy the last show notes too.
Yeah. So you can buy Stan and Jack at PeteDoree.com, bigcartel.com. I'm on Twitter all the time. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I've also started doing this thing called Ko-fi that I'm not 100% convinced about, because it's like Patreon, and I'm starting to think Patreon is probably better. But at the moment, it's ko-fi/Pete Doree. So I'm pretty much everywhere, and you're going to put the show notes on.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, Pete, thanks again, and I highly encourage anybody to go check out Stan and Jack.
And it's really nice to see you again. Thank you.
Nice talking to you, buddy.